masterminds behind this great conspiracy have absolute control of all of our mass communications media, especially television, the radio, the press, and Hollywood. We all know that our State Department, the Pentagon, and the White House have brazenly proclaimed that they have the right and the power to manage the news, to tell us not the truth, but what they want us to believe. They have seized that power on orders from their masters of the great conspiracy. And the objective is to brainwash the people into accepting the phony peace bait to transform the United States into an enslaved unit of the United Nations one world government.
Freedom is what it's all about. There isn't anything that you have, or ever had, or ever hope to have, they're not planning to take away. And I'm talking about the Illuminati. They own it all. They want it all. They intend to reduce the population of the planet by 90%. They don't think that we should be living without control. It's communism. But communism isn't something that was created by the masses to overthrow the banking establishment. It's a creation of the banking establishment to overthrow and enslave the masses. It never was run from Moscow, Hanoi, or Beijing. It's always been run from New York, London, and Washington, D.C. It's an evilarchy. If you want to talk about something that is so bad and so evil, so unimaginable, it's beyond your wildest dreams. You think, well, this couldn't possibly be happening to this country. It can't be happening to us. We should have more government control. But what the government gives, it must first take away. What it takes away, it must take away with force, or threat of force, or violence, or threat of violence, or imprisonment, or threat of imprisonment. Well, to control the world, you have to control two different parties. You've got to control the oppositions, the Democrats and the Republicans. It's like a tennis match. You're looking in this direction, you're looking in that direction, you're looking here and that and back and forth. That's not where it's at. Look up. There's strings attached. Yeah. It's like a puppet. And the people are played like puppets or pawns. They're expendable. They're reduced down to the lowest common denominator of human existence. When the government starts telling you how to think, when they do the thunking for you, we're in trouble. We're in deep kimchi. And I figured, how are we going to reach all of these people? So I made records. The Cross and the Sickle with Dr. Billy James Hargis. Oh, he had some personal problems, but he taught me a lot about what's going on with an NCC. The churches were infiltrated. And then I did Communism, Big Money and You with Colonel Curtis Bedell, Roosevelt's son-in-law. I later wrote a book called The Warlords of Washington when I discovered that Pearl Harbor was set up. We didn't invade ourselves, but all of the information about the invasion to come was hidden from Admiral Kimmel and General Short. You see, in communicating with people, you have to tell them those things that they really don't want to hear. Put pictures that they don't necessarily want to see. Because we have to have combat. We have to have battles. We have to have wars of words against the controlled mass media.
At this point, bear in mind that the Illuminati was not set up to operate on a short-range basis. Normally, a conspirator of any type enters into a conspiracy with the expectation of achieving his objective during his own lifetime. But that was not the case with the Illuminati. The Illuminati operates on the very long-range basis. Whether it will take scores of years or even centuries, they have dedicated their descendants to keep the plot boiling until they hope the conspiracy is achieved.
This is Hollywood. Some think it's the land of dreams. Well, it is the land of dreams, broken dreams. Young men and women come from all across the country, all across the world, seeking fame and fortune. They think they're going to find it here. They're not going to find it here. There's more money made from those who are coming in to be in the business than monies that they would get from the business. In other words, they are getting the business in Hollywood. They're being screwed and blued and literally tattooed with piercings and catching their mind up in drugs and all of the flash and the trash. The world comes to Hollywood thinking that they're going to see the stars. Well, there are some stars, but they're down here. On the sidewalk. The sidewalk of stars. But what message do they leave? Myron Fagan, my mentor, he said to me that, Anthony, we've got a chance to change it. Because the millions can see a movie before a book can be read by one. And people think of the motion picture business as giving us something new and fresh and vital and exciting. Well, it isn't that way. It's quite old. It's a hash and a rehash, and on television they keep running the same old story. But they're out to get you. They want you, and they want you. They want your mind. They want what's in your pocket, but mostly they want what's in your head. At this theater, just days ago, there was a movie called The Devils. They make movies about the devils, but you think that they're making just movies to frighten you. No, they make movies to change you. Movies are made in Hollywood for the message, not just the money. This expose of the Illuminati, which really took place in about 1966 in my mind and turned into the Illuminati C.F.R. records, had taken the story, which would have been dead had I not done it, from this 18,000 people or so who around the world who knew something about the Illuminati to a point where there was about 30 million people by 1970. Now there's in excess of 1 billion people. I mean, movies are being made about the Illuminati, but it's by Tom Hanks and the Da Vinci Code and things of that nature. They're not giving you the whole truth. They say, well, the cat is out of the bag, but they're going to control the size of the bag.
The Joe Pine Show, a fascinating forum of funny, famous, infamous, way out, and factual confrontations and interviews with real people, providing your audiences with information not available to them from any other source.
Well, this information, when I first tried to put it out, I would go on shows like the Joe Pine Show. And Joe Pine was an ornery guy, a Saturday night patriot, and he would scream at the audience, scream at his guests, and try to belittle them. It's sort of like the show you might have seen called Brotherhood of the Bells, when Glenn Ford tried to expose what was happening in the Skull and Bones, and the bell was the Skull and Bones. And they had a talk show host on there who tried to tear him apart. Well, I got that treatment totally from Joe Pine. And I about got into a fight with him. And I said, well, all right, well, I'm going to tie one hand behind my back and we'll go out in the alley and have it out, and the people are screaming. Those people who treat you aggressively, those people who say, well, you shouldn't be talking about the government having something to do with 911, are you crazy? They're going to deny all of that. They're not going to have an argument. They're not going to have an intelligent conversation. They don't want an investigation. They just go into the assumption that all people who might question the government or question Fox News are crazies. And if they continue to do that and you're affected by what they say, then you're reacting to them. They need to react to you because the action is in the reaction. The action is in the reaction.
Phonies! You're all a bunch of phonies!
In the truth movement, let's face it, that's what it is. It's the truth versus the lies. Yeah, if somebody comes out and they're talking like Mr. Smith goes to Washington, I mean, the people listening, they're waiting for somebody to speak properly and get a message out, and you use that endorsement, whether it's of Barry Goldwater or Senator George Murphy. Then you start to communicate. A successful personality is saying, hey, this really is happening to our country. And I talked to Chill Wills. And Walter was a friend of mine. In fact, he took a look at the book, Warlords of Washington. He says, Dan, it's the best damn book on Pearl Harbor I've ever read. See, I don't believe, like Shakespeare, that the good that men do is often tarred with their bones. I believe that the good that men do lives after them. Yes. And when I hear lies from presidents popularized, like, there's only thing we have to fear is fear itself. When anyone makes a lie like that and the people believe it, God help us.
I first became aware of the Illuminati as such when I was able to start my research. Now, I realized when I first got out of the Bureau and started working these type cases, the McDonald case, and it grew from there, that there was something drastically wrong because we had case after case. I had case after case where there was a cover-up, where cover up not only by the federal government, by the FBI and DEA, and but also by the locals, the LAPD. I have a case, a classic case where the LAPD covered up, and so one thing led to another, and then as I developed the information and started researching and started going into the book, so to speak, and rather than just interviewing people, I was able to put it all together. And Illuminati, there's a book out that really woke me up. And it's called Pawns in the Game by William Guy Carr. William Guy Carr was a retired naval commander, Canadian, and he couldn't understand why we had all these wars and all these problems in the world. So he started researching it, and his book really lays it out. And as a matter of fact, on page 26 of that book, Pawns in the Game, it outlines the 25 goals of the Illuminati, which were announced at a conference May the 1st, 1776, by a defrocked priest named Adam Weishaupt in Germany. And these 25 goals included corrupt the youth through sex and drugs, elect your own people to office, meaning the Illuminati, control the media. If you can't elect your own people, put your people in there as agenteurs and agents and advisors. And the list just goes on and on and on. And that list, that 25 goals are right, I'd say right now, about 85% complete. But that was what the book, where I read it in that book, and then that dovetailed into the satanic movement in this country, because Illuminati and Satanism are one and the same as far as I'm concerned. In fact, I've talked to Satanists who have dropped out of the movement, so to speak, or are still victims, and on the run, and they've told me, said, we're Illuminati, and there's absolutely no question about it. Illuminati is a satanic organization. And then, in further research, it became apparent that the Illuminati had infiltrated virtually every level of society in our country, and particularly the governments, the various governments, federal, city, state, and on down, city councils, law enforcement, the intelligence community. They have not missed a lick. I mean, the goals were 230 some years ago, and they have advanced. They started out with 2,000 members, and leading scientists, businessmen, bankers, and so forth. And look what they've done. And look at the control they have. And, you know, if you want total control, you got to take over the money, and they've taken over the money through the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve is not a federal agency. It's a private organization run by the Illuminati. Absolutely no question about it.
In The Fly, the woman was told by Jeff Goldblum, don't be afraid. No. Be afraid. Be very afraid. They intend to kill you. They intend to control you. They want to eliminate all freedom for all people for all time. That's the goal of the Illuminati. In the early years of this exposure, it took me onto radio shows with Robert Vaughn. He talked about the Illuminati. I mean, he reacted to it on national radio, ABC radio. If you try enough, somebody's going to listen, and somebody, you know, just to have something new to say on radio because it's kinky or it's cool or it's controversial. And you'll find talk show hosts that say, hey, I'm going to do that thing. Or management didn't get to them in time to say you can't do it or shouldn't do it. So you get hit, and you get hit, and you get hurt, and you fall, and you get up, and you do it again. And you do it again, and again, and again, and again, and again, and again. And this information bomb has exploded. And there's a fallout. So you can't be stopped. When I was at the studio, the old David Selznick studio, which was first started by Thomas Ince, and later he was under the generalship of Cecil B. DeMille. He was under the direction of Joseph P. Kennedy. It was the studio that was the lot that was the point of contention in the carpetbaggers. Howard Hughes had owned it. Well, when I got there, it was pretty beaten down. Joseph Laird said, well, where are you living? I said, well, in Westwood. He said, well, no, that's not going to do. You have to live here. I said, what do you mean, live here? He said that you have to live here on the lot. And I'm thinking, what is he saying? I'm going to live on the lot? A studio lot? He said, well, Gloria Swanson lived here when she was the mistress of Joseph P. Kennedy. You can live here. I said, where? He said, pick out the Gable bungalow. That's where Vivian Leigh and Clark Gable resided during the filming of Gone with the Wind, which was done there. Orson Welles had the lot when he was, or access to the lot when he was doing Citizen Kane. I'd walk into the scene dock, and there was a big crate, and in it was a statue. And I'm looking at the side. This is to John Foster Kane. Pictures that changed the world, that didn't have any direction. We were going to make pictures that would change the world, that did have a direction. Joseph P. Laird had a vision. He's becoming another Howard Hughes. We'd had the benefit of tax shelter money, about $200 million. And he had seen me come out with the Illuminati C.F.R. records, and I went over and dropped this one particular set of records, there was 3 of them, to Joseph P. Laird. I went over to drop them off, and the secretary said, no, you can't do that, I'll give them to him. I said, no. He ordered them from me. I'm going to deliver them. She said, well, it could be days. I said, I'll wait. About 5 minutes later, she comes back and says, come with me. I go in and I meet Joseph P. Laird. I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that he'd bought the Selznick studio. And I talked to him. He says, well, what do you do, Anthony? He said, well, I said, I make records about the Illuminati. I'm trying to change the world. He said, well, come back tomorrow. And I came back the next day, and the next day, and the next day after that. And I found myself a month later going over to the lot and seeing what was there and what wasn't being done. And I was talking about the ideas that I had, that he had, to change the world. Well, you've got to communicate. That's why we have to get some reaction. If I don't communicate with you, there's not going to be any reaction. The action is in the reaction. When somebody suddenly gets the message, it's, my God, this is happening to us. I mean, I didn't know what was going on until about 1964, and then I didn't put it all together until I met Myron Fagan. We put together this Illuminati C.F.R. records. About 18 million people in the world knew about this. I shouldn't say 18 million, about 18,000. But it became 18 million, then it became about 34.5 million by 1970. I figured a story would just come to an end, it would collapse, it would disappear, it would be gone with the sands of time. A few years later, I was wondering if I'd only been successful at the old David Selznick studio. It was then called Laird International. I was executive VP in charge of production over there, wanting to put movies out about the Illuminati. I figured, well, we could do it. We could change the world. See, a film can be seen by 1 million before a book can be read by 1. And if you take a DVD and make 100 copies and put them out, we don't know where they go. And somebody out there might say, hey, I've got a better idea. I can do this better. I can make a better film. I can communicate with other people you can't communicate with, and it's probably true. See, they don't think that there should be more than about 500 million people on the face of the earth. I mean, that's their program. Well, boys and girls, killing time is here. No, it's not a movie by Mel Gibson, but it's right around the corner. How many millions have they killed? And this is organized evil. People say, well, no, evil isn't organized. I mean, there isn't some sort of Luciferian doctrine out there. There isn't Satan out there. Well, you may not believe in God. The Illuminati believes in God. The Illuminati believes in Lucifer, Lord Lucifer. Take a look at the symbology on the dollar bill. You see the $20 bill folded on our film, 911, The Greatest Lie Ever Sold. It was outside of a restaurant in London. We went in, sat down, and this girl, I took the bill and folded it in one particular way. She says, my God, they've done it. They've done it. She understood by seeing the fold in the bill that this wasn't done by Osama bin Laden, but more likely Osama bin Bush. People are overwhelmed. They're bowled over with all of this stuff. What can I do? My God, I'm just a housewife. I'm going over here taking care of the kids. What can I do? What can you do? How can you change this? When the message starts to take hold, they can't stop it. The films that I do have been to expose the Council on Foreign Relations at 58 East 68th Street in New York City, at the Harold Pratt House. And if you start bringing the names together, you'll find out that the Harold Pratt House is the house of America's Illuminati. You take a look at the United Nations. Who created it? Alger Hiss, first Secretary General of the United Nations Organizational Conference in 1945. He brought in the documents for the United Nations. Oh, a communist spy? Well, that doesn't make any difference. Those communists, they wanted to take over the country and kill the people? Oh, yes. Brought in the charter. There's a picture of him on the steps of the Congress. Alger Hiss, yes. Same organization that David Rockefeller put up. The organization that came about because of the collapse of the League of Nations. Start putting the dots together.
Now let's go back to the birth of the Illuminati. Adam Weishaupt was a Jesuit-trained professor of canon law, teaching in Ingolstadt University when he defected from Christianity to embrace the Luciferian conspiracy. It was in 1770 that the professional moneylenders, the then recently organized House of Rothschild, retained him to revise and modernize the age-old protocols of Zionism, which from the outset was designed to give the synagogue of Satan, so named by Jesus Christ, ultimate world domination, so they could impose the Luciferian ideology upon what would remain of the human race after the final social cataclysm by use of satanic despotism. Weishaupt completed his task May 1st, 1776. Now you know why May 1 is the great day with all communist nations to this very day. That was the day, May 1, 1776, that Weishaupt completed his plan and officially organized the Illuminati to put the plan into execution. That plan required the destruction of all existing governments and religions. That objective was to be reached by dividing the masses of people whom he, Weishaupt, termed Goyim, or human cattle, into opposing camps in ever-increasing numbers on political, social, economic, and other issues, the very conditions we have in our country today. The opposing sides were then to be armed and incidents provided which would cause them to fight and weaken themselves and gradually destroy national governments and religious institutions. Again, I say, the very conditions in the world today.
It was only until 1967 that I was made aware of a set of records produced by Anthony J. Hilder. The records were simply referred to the 33 1/3 set of records, 33 1/3 records. There were 3 of them. And they were called Illuminati. And I had a personal friend who owned a record store, and he called and said, you need to come down and get a set of records that he just had, that Anthony Hilder had just released, called Illuminati. And after hearing that set of records, I began incorporating the information which was on that set of records called Illuminati. Now, this was in 67, early 67. And so that record, that set of records, opened up a whole new world of research for me, because it opened up the religious, commercial, political, and philosophical underpinnings of Western civilization. And I have to say that it was absolutely startling, what the information that was presented. And Myron Fagan was blessed with a voice, not only a profound intellect, but was blessed with a voice that was absolutely captivating. And once you started listening to him, you had to hear the whole thing. And it went on for about 3 hours, where this Myron Fagan on the Illuminati Records began to unfold the most awesome and the most incredible story of intrigue and conspiracy behind closed doors, corruption in government, corruption in banking. And I was fascinated with this. And so in '67, when I became aware of the records of Illuminati and the kind of information that was on those records, it changed my life overnight.
On the backside of the dollar bill, you'll find the Illuminati pyramid. Annuit Septus, Novus Ordo Seclorum, the New World Order. What is all that about? I'm going to ask Jordan Maxwell. Jordan?
Yes, I will use this one I think would be better for. The Novus, let's start with the Annuit Coeptus. Annuit Coeptus is Latin, meaning our enterprise or our project is now a success or has been crowned with success. So then you say, well, your project is now crowned with success. What is the project? Novus Ordo Seclorum, which is novus, meaning new, ordo, order, the new order. Seclorium is the word secular in Latin, meaning the world, the new order of the world. You will notice that there are 13 layers in the pyramid. There are 13 letters in Annuit Coeptus. There are 13 stars above the head of the eagle. There are 13 berries and 13 leaves. There are 13 arrows. There are 13 stripes. Everything is done in sequence of 13 except the wings, which are 32 and 33 for the 32nd degree and 33rd degree of Freemasonry. The 13 is said to be an unlucky number because it represents originally Jesus and the 12, because Jesus and the 12 are the basis for a new order of the world. And so this has been borrowed and used, and I think very cleverly. So it's an unlucky number, we're told, because you're not supposed to use it. To show you how this symbolism on the dollar bill is there's quite a bit of symbolism on the dollar bill here. I want to draw your attention to the right-hand side of the $1 bill at the top on the one. You'll see at the top, right here on the little curvature, if you look very closely, you will see an owl that you can. It is used as a symbol because it sees things in the dark. The little owl on the symbol on the dollar bill is to symbolize something the Bohemian Society, which is incidentally meeting this month up in San Francisco. The owl is a occult symbol used by the Bohemian Society and the Illuminati in general because it symbolizes that you can. It is used as a symbol because it sees things in the dark. And that's why it's wise, implying that our political leaders are seeing things in the dark. They are aware of many dark things which are going on, and that's why they're wise, and you're not. So that's why they are the owls on the dollar bill.
It's important to bring up this particular point. The Bohemian Grove, and this is where all of the fellas meet and run around it in the forest nude, all dressed in black robes. Hooded robes, looking up and worshiping what?
The owl. The owl in front of a bonfire, a large bonfire. And incidentally, we have pictures of all of the American presidents. This has appeared in 3 different magazines, which I have color pictures of. All the American presidents standing around the bonfire in capes and pointed hats, like the Ku Klux Klan type of regalia.
North of San Francisco is the Bohemian Grove. It's along the Russian River. Every year there's a gathering of the elites of the world. People from both political parties, but then we have a one-party system, don't we? The Kissingers, the Reagans, there's one picture with 5 former presidents in M magazine at the Bohemian Grove. And at the Grove they've got a 40-foot owl, the Owl of Moloch. What does that mean? What significance does that have? Well, the fact that they have for years sacrificed children at the base of the Owl of Moloch, you say, oh God, no. You can't be telling me this ridiculous thing. I mean, how are we supposed to believe that? Well, if you see the footage that Alex Jones shot over there, you'll hear the screams of the children being sacrificed. Oh, are they real? Some people say that they have been doing that till recently. Some say it's just a mock killing. A mock killing of children? Is that acceptable? Is it really acceptable? The killing of children. And the voice of Walter Cronkite, the most respected man in news in America. All sorts of people go to the Bohemian Grove. It's rumored that, men run around the Grove naked, running after prostitutes, both male and female. They have the ceremony of care. They sacrifice care. All morality. That's where the Manhattan Project was launched. The Manhattan Project created the atomic bomb. The atomic bomb was dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki to bring about world government. The sacrifice of children. The owl of Moloch. The sacrifices made to their Lord. Is their Lord Lucifer? It's certainly not Christ or Moses or Allah or Muhammad or Buddha. No, they have a different agenda. The top men in industry, in science, in politics, sitting around on benches in the ceremony of care, ushering in a new world order. That's what the Manhattan Project was all about, and they did deliberately and with malice aforethought drop those bombs on an innocent population, just as George Bush dropped the bombs on Baghdad when there was no weapons of mass destruction aimed at us. It was all a fraud. I mean, our men and women brought over to be sacrificed for the owl of Moloch, for the gods of government. And we have Uncle Sam pointing at you, pointing at you, pointing at you. I want you. I want you. I want you to serve Satan. It's supposed to be the U.S. Army, but no. It's to serve Satan. Because if you take a look at the goat of Baphomet and take the picture of the goat of Baphomet, even the hairs in the beard, and they will match up with Uncle Sam. The flange in the horns match up with the flange in the hat. It curves out like this, and in the center of this is the pentagram. Remember, inside the pentagram is the Pentagon. The satanic goat. And you say, well, this is just a coincidence. Of course, Uncle Sam and Satan. And what is his name? Bin Laden? Osama bin Laden? Or is it Osama bin Laden? Bin Laden? Biden? I don't know. You get so confused when you start talking about all of these people. The real enemies and those who pretend to be our allies. Might it be that those people who you consider to be allies are enemies? That the whole thing is upside down? That Uncle Sam really isn't Uncle Sam wanting you to defend this country? I want you to serve. Serve who? Serve Satan. I will assure you that the goat of Baphomet, the goat of Mendez, and the owl of Moloch are not symbols of any sane, but rather a savage society of Satanists, of Luciferians. You put the pictures together, The stars, the satanic star.
Well, I can say this without any hesitation. The Illuminati / Satanism is about 1.5% of the population in this country today. That's a lot of people. That's millions of people. And I derived that figure from 3 different sources. I had one source, this is back in the 1980s, who told me there were about 3,000 Illuminati / satanic members in the South Bay area of Los Angeles. That's about a population of about 200,000. Another source, Lincoln, Nebraska, about 200,000, told me there was about 3,000 there. And another source, Iowa City, Iowa, told me it was about 1,500 in Iowa City, Iowa. At that time, Iowa City, Iowa was about 100,000 people. So if you project that figure nationwide, you're looking at 1.5% of the population. I used to live in Manhattan Beach, California, which is South Bay area. I just mentioned a few moments ago. And I was active involved in the investigation of the McMartin preschool. In the McMartin preschool, this is back in the 1980s, a young child, this is preschool, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-old children, up to 5 years of age. And the children said that there were tunnels under the school, you went in, the entrance was under the rabbit cage outside classroom number 4. And there were tunnels that had been, and they went through the tunnels up into the trap door of the triplex next door. And they were taken out in automobiles and prostituted in the community. And the authorities went out after this and looked, and this case broke in 1982, I think it was. And the authorities went out in 1987 went to the school looking for the tunnels, couldn't find them. In 1990, they had a trial. The old lady, Virginia, I think was her name, and Ray Bucky, the son, and they had the preliminary hearing alone, I think, was a year or 2 years. And the school had been given to Danny Davis, the attorney, representing the defense attorney, and he had sold it to a contractor. And the contractor was going to tear down the school and build an office building on it. I heard about it. I gained control. I gained access to it, not control. Through the contractor asked if I could be on the grounds, go on the grounds and look for the tunnels. I hired an archaeologist from UCLA, Dr. Gary Stickle. He brought in this team of archaeologists, of specialists, and within 34 days, he said, yes, there had been tunnels under the school. And they were filled in. The children said there was a chamber underneath classroom 4. There were 4 classrooms. And that was known as Dog, D-O-G room. Actually, it's God spelled backwards. And the tunnels went into the chamber under classroom 4, and then out, and then around the edge of the school, the foundation, then up into the trapdoor, as I mentioned. And Dr. Stickle said he found a 9-foot chamber there that had been filled in. The tunnels had been filled in. The children said that in the chamber they attended sessions where brown babies were cut up. And there were adults there with robes, nude, but chanting with candles, obviously a satanic ceremony. And so they had one trial, and the Virginia was acquitted. The grandmother was acquitted. I think her name was Virginia. Ray Bucky was hung jury, so they had a second trial. We found the tunnels. Dr. Stickle said there were tunnels there that had been filled in the middle of the second trial. And I called the district attorney's office. They sent an investigator out named Perez. And Perez wanted to argue with Dr. Stickle. There were no tunnels there. Here he is. He's not an expert. Stickler's an expert, right? Anyway, they didn't even use it. In the middle of the second trial, they could have used the tunnels in the trial. Also, I had an informant tell me that the children were taken up into the mountains for ceremonies. And the informant told me exactly where that location was. And the house on that location burned down the day after the information was made public in the newspapers about this case that the allegations of McMartin preschool involvement in this activity. The house burned down on this site, and I went up there and took pictures, and it was built on it was like a fortress built on the side of the mountain. It extended, probably 100 yards. And the only way you could see it was from the air. It was on the side of the mountains, aside from where the road was. In other words, you'd have to get out of your car and walk up over a hill and look down. I know this is where the kids were taken because the kids talked about being flown up into the mountains. As far as I'm concerned, the McMartin preschool case, the whole case was a farce. The kids were telling the truth. The police, when they interviewed the kids, claimed that the therapist had planted this information in the children's minds. This is a huge, huge cover-up. About this same time, other cases were exposed around the country. There was one in North Carolina, another one in Oregon. I think Washington had one. And stop and think about this. The Satanists want to get their hands on these kids young, when they're real young, right? And by getting them when they're young, they can get them MK Ultra mind control program, instill it into the kids. For example, one of the little girls in McMartin case, mother and father both worked. They went into her house, got her kitten, brought her kitten out. This is according to I talked to a little girl myself, and sacrificed that kitten in front of this other children and said, if you talk, we're going to do this to your brother or to your mother and father. It was satanic all the way, absolutely no question about it. But they want to get their hands and indoctrinate these kids in preschool, 2, 3, 4, 5 years of age. And that's part of the MK Ultra mind control program. I happen to know of dependents, military dependent children, who are victims of this. And they may not even realize it. But this is going on. This is going on in America. Wake up, America.
When the Illuminists took over this country, at least financially, in about 1913, they found out that they couldn't get their legislation through. It wouldn't be accepted by the general public, and it certainly wasn't accepted by the Congress and the Senate. So they had to buy up the media, which they did. They got about 25 of the big major papers in this country. And with those, they were able to control the mindset of the masses. You think, well, could the masses be so easily controlled? Could the sheeple be led along the primrose path? Could the Pied Piper lead the people to the end of the cliff, like lemmings? Could they be led over the cliff and down into the sea of socialism? Absolutely, they have been. Hitler did it. Oh, and you think, well, Adolf Hitler was a right-winger. No, you'd better think again about that. Adolf Hitler was not a right-winger. He said on February 5th, 1941, basically, National Socialism and Marxism are the same. He wasn't a right-winger, he was a left-winger. There was the Communist-Nazi Peace Pact of August 23rd, 1939, I believe. That's where Molotov and Ribbentrop came together. The Stalin-Hitler Pact. They joined together with the envisioning of a new world order. They thought we could put the communists and the Nazis together. They would divide up Europe and they would bring us a new world order. That's what they wanted to own the world. Oh, they had to do a few things. They had to eliminate some of those people who were considered useless eaters. I'm talking about the Jews, the gypsies, the gays, all right? They didn't want them to exist. Were they thinking to the right of the political spectrum, where there's no government at all? Or were they thinking from a position of the left? Commune Nazi. Nazi means National Socialism.
Terry, your expertise is enormous in this area, and you've discovered that they have still a smaller chip to identify the people, just like they identify cattle.
That's right, Anthony. Few people are even aware that in Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles, the city council voted a little over a year ago to require that all pets leaving the dog pound, the animal shelter, receive one of these implantable identifying chips in the back of the neck. Whether you have a cat or a dog or whatever, if it gets lost in the city of Los Angeles, escapes from its owner, it's picked up by the pound, it'll be taken to the shelter, and before you can take it home, it must have been injected in the back of its neck with
They get a vaccination.
With an ID chip.
Now we're talking about a vaccination program coming from Hillary Clinton, right?
Right.
And what is the difference between one of these transponders in the back of the hand or in the forehead and Adolf Hitler's mark at the back of the arm?
Well, of course,
there's no difference, is there?
That was a trial run, Anthony, for a New World Order. He used the same term. That was just a trial run, a foreshadowing, a taste of what's really coming. But this is a much more sophisticated form of Luciferian control. In fact, when most people receive this, they'll think they've been enlightened and initiated into this glorious New World Order. They'll have been deceived in thinking that it's a gold card, if you will, an American Express. The most elite mark of the New World Order will be this injected.
Well, I mean, some people are going to say, well, look, my wife doesn't stand any chance of being, robbed. I mean, I can go into the ATM machine and simply go zap, and I can buy anything. I mean, we don't have to use currency anymore, right? I mean, it'd be simply a mark. You go into the market, you bring it to your hand over the scanner, and it automatically debits this money from your account. Oh, and the scanner, I mean, just like this, let's assume this was in the back of the hand, and Jordan, if you will just goes through the scanner, and then you can have a read on the back of the scanner. It'll tell you who you are, where you live, what vehicle you drive, if you're wanted by the police or any other Gestapo-ized agency. What are we going to have?
Well, now
we're going to have a total police state. This is going to make Adolf Hitler look like a Boy Scout. This out Hitler's Hitler.
Yes.
And this is the program.
Yes, but this deception is going to be so great. The new 9-digit postal zip code. You know, you have 5 digits. They're adding 4 spaced by a hyphen. And your Social Security number, which is also 9 digits. So 9 digits Social Security, 9-digit zip code gives a total of 18 digits, and they plan to divide those 18 into 3 separate 6s.
And all of the numbers are contained in a big place called the Beast. Where? Brussels?
The Beast is the nickname computer for the Euronet computer in Luxembourg. But there's even a larger one, more capable than anything the Beast could have ever done now, and that's in Culpeper, Virginia, the underground nuke-proof facility of the Federal Reserve, which we already explained is controlled by the Illuminati, is the Illuminati. And in Canterbury, Australia now, there's a master underground computer that's capable of controlling everything on Earth. So all these systems are now networked, including with the Euronet Beast.
And the Gannett Corporation is trying to get a message across to the people. I don't know if you've ever seen this picture. Feel like a number? Take care. The cure for the Common Health Program. And of course, the Common Health Program, they would have all of your medical history, all of it, on this little scanner. You say, well, this is wonderful. And you'd see a number on the top of one's head. Well, I don't see one on yours, Terry. I mean, apparently you haven't made the decision to go with it.
Anthony, I like my hairdo better. But it's interesting that we're being conditioned, folks, and if you don't think so, just look on the billboards on the side of the freeway. This is one of them. And this was placed on the side of the freeway about 6 months ago. And it's supportive of a conditioning program to get you used to having things placed on your body, on your head specifically, and on your hand, and so on.
Well, if people think for one moment that individuals aren't being conditioned, you better start taking this seriously.
That's right.
You want to get a B-roll? Am I walking this way? In fact, we're taking a look at, we're at Highland in Hollywood. We're taking a look at a building. This is Hollywood First National. At the top, there's 8 obelisks which surround the building at the top. Then there's some sort of eagle. It looks like some gargoylean global government symbol. There's a pyramid at the top and the lightning rod. Gargoyles on the side. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's steeped in Masonic symbology, in satanic symbology. Do you think it's significant? The Vatican has the obelisk as well. There's so much symbology in this one building. It can't be ignored, but yet it is ignored. How many people have ever stopped to look up? Somebody spent a lot of money putting those gargoyles on there. Demons, devils. There's an agenda here in America. The agenda is to take over the country, take over your mind, take over the world. Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. One world, one race, one ruler. Then I looked just down a ways on Hollywood, and there's, get to the point, the new Luxor, the Illuminati Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas. They don't talk about all the people that have taken a dive off one of the rings, or I shouldn't say rings because it's pyramidal, one of the levels to the floor below. More people have committed suicide or died in that Illuminati Luxor than all of the other hotels. And at the top, there's the light of Lucifer shining into the heavens. Or shining towards the heavens, or shining towards hell. It's steeped in Illuminati lore. It's Luciferian. It's the Luxor. The Luciferian Luxor, the Illuminati Luxor. Hollywood. It's a horror. The Disney movies are full of satanic symbols, from Fantasia to the present. I met Walt Disney. Seemed like a pretty good guy. But when I met him, it was at a victory party for Senator George Murphy. And Walt, at that time, was drunk. What? Oh, honey, I'd love to have you on TV. Here in Hollywood, we've got the signs of Scientology all over. They attracted like flies to a piece of crap. L. Ron Hubbard and Jack Pearson and that other fella had a lodge over there in what's the name of the guy? Lucifer Crowley. Aleister Crowley, L. Ron Hubbard, and Jack Parsons put a lodge together in Pasadena. L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Whitesides Parsons, who designed the Pentagon. Oh, the Pentagon is the interior of the pentagram, the satanic pentagram. The largest building in this country, one of the largest buildings in the world, if not the largest building in the world. L. Ron Hubbard, Jack Whitesides Parsons, and Aleister Crowley, the Beast, all gathered together and put together a lodge out here in Pasadena. They come here to Hollywood. They're volcanic. They're dynamic. They appeal to the stars. God. Poor, innocent, stupid people who think that they're going to find God through the volcanics, the Dianetics of L. Ron Hubbard or Aleister Crowley, the Beast. Is Aleister Crowley the father or the grandfather of President George Herbert Walker Bush's mother? They look alike. Now, could that possibly be? George Herbert Walker Bush was called Magog at the Skull and Bones. Well, that's the man who wages war against humanity. Actually, the one that wages war against God in the final days of earth. They think that they're going to have a world government and that we're all going to lay down and we're going to listen to the likes of L. Ron Hubbard, Aleister Crowley, the Beast. This fence, made out of iron, is the divide between the people who walk up and down the streets of Hollywood Boulevard and the Egyptian Theater. In Cairo, you'll see all sorts of satanic, evil-looking gargoylean things. You saw the film The Exorcist, right? Something was happening at that time in the life of humanity that would scare the hell out of you. I think it's time for another exorcism to get the beast out of the Bible Belt, to get the devil out of Hollywood. How do you get the whore out of Hollywood? People pay for that entertainment. And now there's hip-hop music, and they're talking about, the Baphomet. It's Batho-rap. And they come up, and I think it's like this, right? And it's the 6, and it's the 333. It's 6 times 3. 6, 6, 6. Oh, Beyonce, her husband, Jay something or other, Lady Gaga. What? Jay-Z. Oh, Jay-Z. Jay-Z, her husband, Lady Gaga, and all of those other Goonies. They think, well, they too can go to hell, and they will. They're bringing you down. You're listening to the Batho-rap. And it's like a virus. It's caught up in the industry. And people are saying, well, it's cool to worship the devil. And one T-shirt says, do that which thy will or one will, or not the will of God, but what you want in opposition to God. Oh, there is a religion going on in the music industry. There sure as hell is one in the motion picture industry. They make movies about Satanism. They prepare you to go to hell. They don't prepare you to go up. They prepare you to go down. There's many ways of taking a look at Hollywood. You can go from the street level, or you can go up to the top, or you see the gargoyles, the pyramids, the obelisks. And that obelisk out there they call the Washington Monument is 555 feet high above ground. 20% below ground, that's 111 feet. Put the 111 and the 555 together, and it's 666. My God. Wake up. The Egyptian Theater, right next to the old Pig and Whistle, and that was a terrific restaurant in its day, is still here. The program has changed. The names are different. You see the names of the fallen, and you learn something. You will learn something. You will get the message if you put it all together. I've been working at it for 42 years. Before that, I just couldn't quite put the pieces together. Now they are coming together for us to get the big picture. And it's like a giant geopsychopolitical jigsaw puzzle. And you look and you generally get the edge, but you don't put it all together unless you put the pieces together. Once you do that, then you get the message that these guys who are putting all of this stuff on celluloid, on film, are making this fantasy for us to believe that Disneyland is the truth. And people just don't care anymore. They're like zombies, like in the movies. Dead from the neck up, but they're still walking around and talking around. We can and shall change it and do that which has never been done before. Let us incite a revelation. Let us awaken the world. The revelation, the awakening, it's for you. And it's now. What the government gives, it must first take away. So we have this right-left syndrome. We've got the Hegelian politic in effect. We've got the legitimate left and the legitimate right battling each other. It's a one-party system. And most of you don't get it. Most of you will never get it because you're not supposed to. You see, you're not supposed to get it. You're not supposed to understand how this geopsychopolitical puzzle is put together. Oh, you may get the edges of it, but you've never seen the top of the box. Once you get the big picture, then it all comes together. Communism is being sold as the grand equalizer, taking from one to give to another. And poor people say, well, yeah, let's get from the rich, but the rich furnish the jobs. And then there's no jobs, and they say, well, we've got to have jobs. Let's go to the government. So we all work for the government. Communism is a slave system. And that's really what they want. They want slavery. They want to take from you to give to another. And they tell the other they've got to take more from you. So our jobs have gone down. The exportation of slave labor product to China. China's exterminated about 100 million people. Oh, you get things cheap here, yeah. At what cost? I said, well, it's just the lives of a few Chinese, right? Who gives a damn? They're out there looking. One looks like another. That's the way it's being sold. See, racism is sold. When I was a kid, I was going to school, and they used to dig foxholes out there in the yard or in the vacant lot. And there was films like Back to Bataan and 5 Graves to Cairo and 60 Seconds Over Tokyo. Kill that dirty yellow-bellied Jap, rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat, and that's what they were supposed to do. You've got to be told to hate. You've got to be told to believe what the government tells you and have no other opinion. Fox News says, well, we're on the opposite side here. We're going to tell you the truth. We're going to offer less government. But the guys who are working for Fox News are working for Murdoch. Murdoch is one of them. So they never talk about 911 being an inside job. Never, 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 never. They ridicule anyone who does that. They have to, because that's where they're getting their paycheck from. And it's all part of keeping us looking at the other guy as the enemy. Or over here, look over your shoulder. Again, it's upstairs. I used to go with a girl named Ruby Lou. She was working at a restaurant, Trader Vic's, part of the Hilton Hotel in Beverly Hills. She invited me over to a party one night. She said, don't invite anyone else. I said, I'm not. Went up to Holmby Hills and up to Gene Harlow's old place through a guarded gate. Went in, there's about 7 or 8 people there, one of which was Marlon Brando. During the evening, I got into a conversation, an argument with Brando over his politics. He said, well, we want to talk about this equality thing. I said, Marlon, if they cut you up into 20 pieces or 50 pieces or 200 pieces, we're going to sort of ration your talent out. You're not equal with other people. You've got more going for you in a certain area. But he thought that that was the best thing. He was from the legitimate left, and I like Marlon. We talked for, over 2 hours, and my girlfriend and I got out of there. She was insistent that I leave because she thought we were going to get into a physical fight, which wasn't going to happen. We can incite a revelation, but it's going to take from the people from the legitimate left and the legitimate right coming together. No longer a fighting, but a melding, coming together like this.
I don't necessarily think that Anthony is a great filmmaker. I'm an honest guy. He is not a great filmmaker. As a matter of fact, he's not a good filmmaker. But the information within inside of his films, if you want to call them that, I think they're more documentaries that are kind of done in a guerrilla style, that are sometimes very dramatic, over dramatic sometimes, to create sort of like this. To create this sort of terror syndrome. And this is one of the problems that I've been trying to talk about my fellow brothers in the movement and the research of the Illuminati, that, in my opinion, needs to be kind of toned down a bit. Is what it does is it creates almost like an anti-truth, or like this anti-information wheel spinning towards the public, whereby they look and they say, oh, there's another one of those nuts or fruitcakes talking about the Illuminati again. See, I think it's a little bit more serious now. And Anthony's my friend, and I know the information he's talking about is dear and serious for us to. And he's the founding member of, or one of the founding members of this movement. But if the truth be known, I will tell the truth, and I would like to say that we have to find a more serious way of implementing this information to the public. And what it's causing, just like it is with Alex Jones and Anthony and so many of the other guys in the movement, David Icke and the rest of these guys, is it's causing people to almost get a spin effect off of this information. It's like, oh, there's those Illuminati characters, this drama that Anthony uses. It's quite interesting for showmanship. But in reality, there needs to be a very serious tone directed towards the information that is given to the public. The public needs to be, we need, filmmakers that have talent, that understand how to implement films, need to be the ones utilizing information from geniuses like Mr. Hilder. And he's a genius when it comes to the information. But when it comes to the implementation of the films, it has to be done by people who know how to make films, whereby it creates a serious outlook and a serious understanding to people who want to know more about this. And first of all, most people don't even think this is real. They think it's insanity. They think it's, in fact, when I was talking about it early in the 1990s on movie sets, $40 million movie sets, I'd have people surrounding me, and I would talk to them about the information I knew about the back of the dollar bill, the pyramid, the all-seeing eye, what it meant, the hidden agenda and within the dollar bill, and all the rest of the secret society symbols all over the place, and some of which I wanted to utilize in my movies, but didn't at that point because I didn't myself know was it real. I knew that there had to be some aspects of it that were real, like Anthony spoke about, and one of the best things I've ever heard from Anthony was the thing that Myron Fagan made that Anthony actually produced. Anthony's a great producer. He believes in the movement. And as I said, I don't think he's a great filmmaker, but I think he's a brilliant guy who has a lot of information that he's tried to get out there. And now it's time for the people like us who know how to make films to help him implement this brilliant information. And I really believe that they care and want to get this information out. But the problem with some of the movement is that people are taking their egos. They're taking their egos and they're setting up shop. The problem that's happening in the movement is this. You have a great, vast amount of information that needs to get out. Whether it's movies, TV, whether it's radio, whether it's whatever program it may be to get, let me say that again. Anyway, so I think the problem of the movement is there needs to be some sort of organization that's not there now. And I think if I was an outsider, being that I'm a filmmaker that has actually been inside the real Hollywood aspect of filmmaking, I know what you need to do to implement and create a situation whereby people take this serious. Because this is beyond movies to me. This is beyond the ego to me. This is if in fact it is real, if in fact all the things I talked about on movie sets, whereby I was told not to speak about them anymore early on, and I was told if I spoke about them that I would not be allowed to be on the sets anymore, and I slowly started to get blackballed because of the information I was getting out to people. And what happens is you start asking yourself, wait a minute, at the beginning I was talking about secret societies, Illuminati, showing people information. And, you would have people say, this is crazy, this is a conspiratorial crackpot bullshit, this is that. And you find yourself asking yourself, why then am I not allowed to talk about it if it's so harmless? If it's harmless and it's just a conspiratorial view that really is meaningless and it doesn't meet them, why did so many people get upset early on that were very important people in my career, specifically people that had a lot of control of the media? And I'm talking very, very important. The hierarchy of Hollywood. I mean, we'd have talks and we'd have meetings, and I would discuss these matters and ask them what they thought, and talk to them about what I saw and the symbols that I'd learned about, whether it be stuff I learned from Anthony or others, because I learned a lot on my own and with others also. Anthony was the beginning of my process as an investigator into secret societies, and as a writer and as a filmmaker that kind of implemented some of these ideologies.
And let's again go back to the first days of the Illuminati. Because Britain and France were the two greatest world powers in the late years of the 18th century, Weishaupt ordered the Illuminati to foment the colonial wars, including our Revolutionary War, to weaken the British Empire and organized the French Revolution to destroy the French Empire. He scheduled the French Revolution to start in 1789. However, in 1784, a true act of God placed the Bavarian government in possession of evidence which proved the existence of the Illuminati, and that evidence could have saved France if they, the French government, hadn't refused to believe it. Here is how that act of God happened. It was in 1874 that Weishaupt issued his orders for the French Revolution. A German writer named Zwack put it into book form. It contained the entire Illuminati story and Weishaupt's plans. A copy of this book was sent to the Illuminists in France, headed by Robespierre, whom Weishaupt had delegated to foment the French Revolution. The courier was struck and killed by lightning as he rode through Ralestan on his way from Frankfurt to Paris. The police found the subversive documents on his body and turned them over to the proper authorities. After careful study of the plot, the Bavarian government ordered the police to raid Weishaupt's newly organized lodges of the Grand Orient and the homes of his most influential associates. All additional evidence thus discovered convinced the authorities the documents were genuine copies of the conspiracy by which the Illuminati planned to use wars and revolutions to bring about the establishment of a one-world government, the powers of which they, headed by the Rothschilds, intended to usurp as soon as it was established, exactly in line with the United Nations plot of today.
I remember hearing those records or recordings of those records years after I had read books by Gary Allen Nunder called A Conspiracy, but I'd also really woken up because I'd read so much mainline history and large pieces of what Hilder and others had covered, like G. Edward Griffin, was already out there in the open source in mainline history. It's just Anthony, Hilder, and Myron Fagan and others connected those dots, and here we are 50 years later, and everything they've talked about has come true. And it just shows how far ahead of their time they were. Really, in filmmaking, Hilder influenced me quite a bit because I never intended to be a radio talk show host or to be a filmmaker. I was just concerned in the early and mid-1990s about corruption and tyranny and the open announcements of world government and the attempts to demonize the American people and set up kind of a internal NKVD Soviet-style internal police force going on under Clinton and what happened at Waco. And there weren't a lot of films and documentaries, from the Illuminati, expose position, exposing the globalist. And some of the films that influenced me were Anthony Hilder's documentaries.
You see it on the back of the dollar bill, left-hand side, it says Novus Ordo Seclorum, New World Order. You think, well, that's going to be good because all of the nations are going to join together and we're going to have world peace. But there's no sovereignty. If there's no sovereignty, there's no room to separate or segregate or integrate or do your own thing. You have to follow the advice of the dictator. Is there a dictatorship in this country? Absolutely. The Council on Foreign Relations at 58 East 68th Street in New York City. At the Harold Pratt House. This is where these operations happen here. In the Royal Institute of International Affairs in London. See, the British thought, well, they could bring this organization over here and we would buy into it. Well, it said Royal Institute of International Affairs, and people in the United States, they didn't want another king. They didn't want royalty controlling this country. They didn't want to repeat the terrors and horrors of the past. And they had already created a war in hopes that the war would bring about a demand for this League of Nations. The war didn't do it. They didn't have the power because they didn't own the press. They didn't own the mentality of America's masses. They did this in Great Britain. They did it in the United States. So World War I, which was created, was followed by World War II. They had to have a conclusion of World War II so horrific, so terrible, so nasty, that there was only one thing to do. That's to create a weapon so bad, so horrible, that the people around the world will say, hey, we can't have separate nations. We can't have people fighting each other and killing each other. We've got to have a weapon so bad, so immense, that the people will demand world government. Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. Hitler's dream come true? The European Union.
Well, one of the most effective means of population control is vaccination, and the average individual finds it difficult to believe that they would be vaccinating our children because they want to destroy fertility, but that indeed is the case. And basically, of course, before we started the vaccination programs in America, we didn't see autism. I mean, autism was very, very rare. One in every 10,000 children, at the most 2 in every 10,000 children. Today, after we started doing extensive vaccinating back in the early 1980s, today in the United States, 1 in every 6 children has a neurodevelopmental abnormality or learning disability. 1 in 9 children is asthmatic. 1 in 11 to 12 children has severe allergies. 1 in 66 boys has autism, and their lives are destroyed, and the lives of their family are destroyed. 1 in every 90 to 100 children has autism. 1 Sydney in every 450 children has juvenile diabetes, which is an autoimmune disease, and you seldom, if ever, see these in children who have not had vaccination. You don't see them in the Amish children or in the Mennonite children who have not been vaccinated. But when they actually stopped putting mercury in the childhood vaccines in the United States, they left it in the childhood vaccines that are given to the little black children and brown children in Africa. And who is financing that? Why, William Gates. But William Gates is one of the major people behind population control. Why would the man behind population control be financing and spending hundreds of millions of dollars to vaccinate little black and brown children throughout the world? Why, very simply because it destroys their fertility. Not only their fertility, but the fertility of their children and the fertility of their grandchildren. And it works this way. You see, basically, it's all controlled by genetics, and they know what genetics is. It's called epigenetics. And if you can turn off the fertility genes in one generation, then when they have children, if they have any at all, why, their genes will be turned off. And by the time you get to the 3rd generation, why, of course, you're not going to be having hardly any children at all. That's exactly what they're doing. They know what they're doing. Now, we were talking about vaccination. Vaccination, certainly, it is the mercury in the vaccines that is toxic, but it is the whole vaccination process. It is an imitation of the normal disease process, but instead of going through the normal 3 stages of response to infection, you only go through 2 of them, and many times the immune system, which ordinarily should turn off, of course, after you're immune to the disease, because you've used an artificial means of stimulating the immune system to prevent a disease, the immune system doesn't turn off, and people get autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and lupus, and various types of thyroiditis, and various types of myalgia, and multiple sclerosis, and anterior lateral sclerosis or Lou Gehrig's disease, and a myriad of diseases that are exploding in America today, and nobody can figure out why. And basically what we're doing is attacking the mind. We're attacking it with mercury, and we're attacking it with aluminum, and we're attacking it with fluoride in the drinking water because there is no safe level of fluoride in the drinking water. Fluoride is a deadly poison, and fluoride, of course, decreases fertility, it lowers intelligence, it's carcinogenic, it produces osteoporosis of the bones, it disrupts thyroid function, it disrupts the immune system, it disrupts the endocrine system. They know what they're doing. And basically, of course, when they fluoridate the water, of course, usually they use something called hydrofluosilicic acid. And of course, that will leach. It's very, very toxic. It leaches the lead out of brass faucets. It leaches the lead out of solder in older pipes. And in those places where they use hydrofluosilicic acid, and believe me, that is 90% of the communities where they fluoridate the water, and they fluoridate the water in 68% of communities across America. But in those areas where they actually use the hydrofluosilicic acid, and this work was done by Dr. Robin Masters back at Dartmouth University. Dr. Masters talks about the study done by the CDC, so they know what's going on. And they found that in the areas where they had fluoridated the water with hydrofluosilicic acid, in white children, the incidence of lead in the children's blood doubled. In Hispanics, it went up 4 times. In blacks, it went up 6 times. Why is that important? Why? Because lead in the brain leads to criminal activity and rage and irresponsible activity. And of course, what they're doing is poisoning the blacks. And today, 71 in every 30 adult people in the United States is in prison, probation, or parole. But among the black population between 21 and 31, 1 in every 3 blacks is in prison, probation, or parole. And Dr. Robin Masters had checked out the statistics, comparing areas where they fluoridated the water with hydrofluosilicic acid and where they did not. And of course, you could directly correlate the amount of criminal activity, especially among the blacks, with the communities where they fluoridated the water. So they know what they're doing.
They have a program. In England, there's Stonehenge, and you go out and you see some stones out there in the middle of nowhere, sort of meaningless. But here we have our Stonehenge, the Georgia Guidestones. And you take a look up there on the stone, and it says they intend to reduce the population of the planet by 90%. What does that mean? 90%. That means 9 out of 10 of you are going to die if they're successful. But there are people at the lower levels of society, economically, who are saying, oh, well, what we need is more government. We need dental care. We need health care. We'll accept that chip, the Obama chip, underneath my arm. I can do that. Or they'll say, well, the vaccinations, they're good for my children. You don't want to vaccinate your child. Autism is now about 1 out of 150. Years ago, it was about 1 out of 3,000. What's the difference? Vaccinations. They say, oh, well, no, all of the stats say that really doesn't screw up your child. I've got a co-host who worked with me on the film Frankenfed, The Monster Amongst Us. And she's got a little child, little boy, growing all of the time. He was normal. He was a good, great little kid. Now, he just goes off on tangents and sometimes screams and runs down the aisles at these conventions. What happened? Well, she sent him in for some vaccinations. She didn't know. Most people don't know. They thought the vaccinations are good for the kid, right? The vaccinations are the right thing, the right way to go. It's what we need. Scramble the boy's brains. Just like with an egg beater. We have fluoride. Oh, does it help? Not really, unless they want to put forth a program that hardens the arteries. Oh, it does harden the teeth at a certain age, but it also hardens arteries. They're making it mandatory in cities like Santa Monica, the People's Republic of. And the government says, well, this is good for you. They can bring you to a point of health through mandatory fluoride. Fluoride is the substance which Alcoa and some of the big aluminum companies threw into the water systems, and the fish and the wildlife were poisoned. They wound up dead. And when the big boys with these companies said, well, what can we do to stop this? They talked to their guys in research and development. They said, well, it hardens teeth. He says, good, we'll dump it into, we'll sell the poison.
The architects of the New World Order are on record. We have the major foundation documents by the Rockefeller Foundation and others where they talk about adding things to vaccines to reduce fertility. But if you give somebody a vaccine that sterilizes everyone that takes it, then they get caught. But if they just put it out there and it sterilizes a certain percentage, and then they put sodium fluoride in the water, which their own studies show reduces fertility and increases cancer, and then they put mercury in the shots that does the same thing, and then they design GMO foods. In every case it comes out that this new corn reduced fertility and increased cancer in rats, does the same thing in humans. Just example after example where they're hitting us from so many different sides that people can't figure out what's killing them, but we know diabetes is off the chart. We know cancer is off the chart. And when this is all pointed out, the establishment comes out and says, well, we're actually living a little bit longer than we used to. So this is all a lie. Sure, cancer rates are up and all this is happening, but it's all a lie, a statistical manipulation.
It's not that the prisoners are within the bars or on some sort of island. They're not isolated. They're everywhere. And the prison is the United States. We have a prison around us. We have a prison without walls because the system is imprisoning us. The system is taking us from freedom to slavery, from choice to lack of choice, from chance to no chance, from life to death. What the government gives, it must first take away. What it takes away, it must take away by force or threat of force or violence or threat of violence. You've got to understand that. That's what freedom is all about. Freedom is choice. Choice is freedom. If you don't have choice, you don't have freedom. The government says, well, you can't make up your mind as to what you should say and what you can't say. The government has to control that. Government education, government reeducation, government manipulation in the mind. We have the Hitlerization of this nation. We have a black Hitler. We have Mugabe Light in as the president of the United States. Is he a socialist? Yes. Is he a national socialist? Absolutely. Is he an international socialist? Yes. Is he doing his own thinking? I think not. He's reading the cameras. He's reading the cheat cards. They used to have little cards which you'd pull out and take a look at those for notes. Now it's right in front of the camera. Can he speak on his own? I would love to speak without notes, without teleprompters, to Obama. Can he think on his own without the cards? I don't think so. Pictures are seen where the teleprompters went down. What happened to Obama? He fumbled, he stumbled. But you say he's the quarterback of the team. He has not had a new idea. Not a one. It's all Marx. It's all Hitler. Communazi. Communism, Nazism, same thing. And what do they have to do to enforce these programs? Well, they have to kill people. Communism. So they've created the illusion of this so-called right is the Nazis, and the so-called left is the communists, and I guess the reason that they have done this is so they can keep us going back and forth like in the tennis match. But it isn't back and forth, it's up there. The manipulation is coming from up there.
There's been a problem in the past in the fact that people would come up with accurate information that was tangible. It'd be like the blind men around the elephant. One would grab a tail and swear it's like a rope. Another would grab the leg and say it's like a trunk of a tree. And of course they're both right, but instead of killing each other over it or having a food fight, they need to share the information to put the picture of this animal, this treacherous beast that's enslaving mankind, share that information to get the fuller picture. Otherwise we're not going to be able to survive. So you need to measure and weigh the information you get and understand that well. The Council on Foreign Relations is the outward body of a nervous system that was put together in 1832. And this was done at Yale. It's referred to as the Skull and Bones. They refer to themselves, and other Yale societies refer to them as the Brotherhood of Death, a title that is certainly deserving. The two co-founders were William Russell and Alphonso Taft. Alphonso Taft moved from being that person in that Yale class that put together that so-called senior year society fraternity. He ended up as Secretary of Defense, or Secretary of War, as it was known then. He was also an ambassador to Russia, in which they were making their plans for the eventual communist revolution in 1917 to take over that country. But you'll find that these people from this group, Skull and Bones, it's interesting because they only induct 15 people per year, which is so small that there can't be more than maybe 600 or 700 living at any one time. And you'll find them at the core of war and the core of the intelligence agencies.
Wars are engineered. Wars like bridges are engineered. They're by design. Was it necessary for us to go over and bomb the hell out of Afghanistan? In Iraq? Did Hussein have weapons of mass destruction? No. There was weapons of mass deception. Weapons that were created within the minds of the people watching the camera. See, when you're told something and it comes out in the major media, you have a tendency to believe it. You say, well, they wouldn't be lying to us. You think the Afghans, those tribal guys with World War I guns, you think they were making atomic weapons? Hell no. See, the Taliban didn't want opium to be exported. They didn't want their whole economy to be on opium. The amount of opium coming out of Afghanistan is now 12 times higher than it was before the United States went in. And what has the Brotherhood of Death got to do with the opium trade? What does the Queen of England have to do with the British Dutch East India Company? What? Were they involved in opium? What was that war about? I mean, with China. Were they getting the Chinese hooked on opium? Absolutely. So there was a war. Can we avoid war by eliminating the drug trade? Probably not, but they used those monies, and they used the drugs not because they have to have the money. It's not about the money. It isn't about the money, it's about the control. See, with drugs, they control the minds of the masses. You think, well, but they're different than that. They want to change. They're trying to. In Afghanistan, are they changing? Obama said there would be a change, would be out of Afghanistan. No. He's increased the number of bombs, the number of killings, the control, the raping, the robbing, the controlling of the people. From womb to tomb. Total, complete, absolute control. A dictatorial Hitlerian superstate.
Some 30 years ago, Anthony Hilder and myself, we went to the Republican convention in Detroit, and we had already known that Ronald Reagan had reversed his positions. as you can see in my crossfire debate or interview with Pat Buchanan and Tom Braden, I said that I agree with about 90% of what Reagan says and disagree with about 90% of what he does. Ronald Reagan, when he was the governor of the state of California, put through the largest tax increase. He put through the first gun laws, the Mumford Act. He appointed Caspar Weinberger and other people from the international establishment. He was an attender of Bohemian Grove. But Reagan, an actor who was a union leader, most people understand that union leaders are basically of the left, if not hardcore socialist or Marxist. He was a union leader of the Screen Actors Guild, which was taken over early on as a propaganda vehicle by the international community pushing world government.
There is no free lunch what the government gives. It must first take away. It takes away from productive businesses to give to the government, which is a non-productive business. They create the foreclosures, the bankruptcies. See, it has to go down. There's no upside. You can't print something out of nothing and simply issue it into circulation. You see, there was that type of inflation in Argentina when I was there. It's been in Mexico. The government doesn't care about the people, the Latinos. Hell no. They want a North American Union, the merging of Mexico, the United States, and Canada. They want a single currency, an Amero. You say, well, what's wrong with that? Oh, it's okay if we simply lower our standards. It's all lies. It's all deceptions. It's a magical thing. With magic, you create the illusion. You create an illusion. You've got one thing going on here, and the fellow's going into his pockets and pulling stuff out, and you see only what you're supposed to see. You hear only what you're supposed to hear. The Illuminati is about the Luciferian oligarchy and evilarchy. Are these people trying to reduce the population of the planet by 90%? Do they have a theological program? Are they trying to actually bring us into hell on earth? Oh, and there was a woman, Madame Blavatsky. She was the godmother, so to speak, for Adolf Hitler, the guiding light. Her publication was called Lucifer. She was the publisher and co-editor of Lucifer magazine. Do they have a God, an agenda? Yes, they do. When you put out Lucifer magazine, it's pretty clear. It's real straight. When you say, yes, Lucifer is God, it's pretty clear, yes. Is the Illuminati about their Lord Lucifer? Yes. Illuminati? Absolutely.
You'll find at the apex one of the best books put out. It's from a gentleman from Texas. That's wonderful. It's called Who's Who of the Elite, and it includes members of the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, and the Council on Foreign Relations, with a brief it has a brief definition of each of those organizations. And the advantage of this is that it has a cross directory, so that you can find, for instance, a person that owned the local newspaper here for years was Dow Jones. Dow Jones is headed by Peter Kahn and Karen House. Karen House is directly related to Colonel Mandel House, who was one of the incorporators or formers of the Council on Foreign Relations itself. And she's also part of the Wall Street Journal foreign organizations, news organizations, and she's also a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, like her husband, Peter Kahn. As portrayed in their own book called Agenda 21, which advocates Agenda 21, they are talking on page 315. They say the far-reaching programs of Agenda 21 to be successful must begin to integrate every human action, every personal decision, what we manufacture, what we buy, what we wear, how we travel, what we eat, who we choose as leaders, and a myriad of other questions, which must begin to be answered with the recognition that every single action has an impact on the environment and upon all other human beings. So under the guise of green, they are virtually putting a tyranny, a total tyranny, for every single human action that takes place. These are two books that were put out. I'll have to get the dates on them. One is called the Conservative Papers, and the other is called the Liberal Papers. And on the Conservative Papers, once again, we have the lead article, or the second article on here, is written by Henry Kissinger. And so these organizations and these peoples that create the political spectrum so that they can lead you. This was written in 1964. Back when Barry Goldwater was running for president, they created their own left and their own right. They were working on two different organizations that were supposedly the antithesis of each other. And they are, in a sense, because they're fictitious. They're not truly coming from the people. They're coming from the manipulators. And those, and you couldn't find a better manipulator than Henry Kissinger, who's a member of the Bilderbergers, the Trilateral Commission, the Council on Foreign Relations, etc., etc. And certainly has been a Rockefeller associate. He worked at the Council on Foreign Relations. So on one hand, this is who they consider conservative. If I went through the liberal group, you'd find members of the Council on Foreign Relations filling both sides of this so-called game they're playing. It's merely puppeteering that's happening, and most people are caught and have chosen a side and have a hard time letting go of the game.
The government should not be your master, but rather your slave. The government should do what we demand. We should not be slaves to the government. We should not be possessions of the government, as is the case now through the Department of Commerce. You know that when you're born, at the bottom of the birth certificate says Department of Commerce. You're owned by the Department of Commerce, and the Department of Commerce is owned by the Federal Reserve. What the government pays for, the government controls. If the government pays for the education of your child, the government controls your child. They dictate what your child can learn. What they tell your child, what they show your child, how they guide your child, is not for the benefit of the child. They don't learn to think, they learn to obey. They do what they're told. That's what public education is all about. See, those things in society which were heretofore unacceptable are now acceptable. The biochip, the Obama chip. Look into the 2,500 pages of this document that is called the Obama Health Care. Health Care, it's Obama Health Care. Vaccinations, compulsory. Obama doesn't think for himself, somebody else is doing the thinking. It would be scary if Obama thought for himself. There's no original ideas. Marx and Mao, Hitler, Mussolini, Mengistu, Pol Pot, 200 million people have died under socialism. Old Ruby Lou, who I had gone with when I had met Brando, had gone home to her place on the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, and she got talking to me about communism. She thought communism was a pretty good idea. Maybe that's why she and Brando hit it off so well. She said, well, you know, it's an equalizer. I said, really? She said, oh, it does it. I said, and she had told me that her father was a big capitalist, a money man in China. And I said, well, you wouldn't want anything to happen to your father. I said, you know, they kill people like that. She said, yeah. I said, you wouldn't want somebody like that to be, you know, to kill your father. She says, well, they've got to do what they have to do. I said, what do you mean they've got to do what they have to do? I said, how about your mother? She says, oh, kill her too. She was willing to give up her love of family and her family's love of her for the state. See, people become possessions of the state. They own you. They control your thinking. When Pol Pot had his thing in Cambodia and he started killing off the people, anybody who could read, anybody who would wear glasses, right? They were considered intellectuals. They understood things that they shouldn't understand. So a third of the population in Cambodia were killed by the Pol Pots, the Khmer Rouge. Massive, massive murder. That's what it is. You think, well, those people over at Fox, they want to bring in the right guys against all of this because they're conservatives. That's like saying that Ronald Reagan was a conservative. Like I remember at Detroit when we were all looking out there at the arena and suddenly the whole event came to a close. All of the conservatives were, most at least, were opposed to George Bush because he knew that he was not going in the right direction. And Ronald Reagan was supposed to be the guy who carried the torch, who was telling them that we're going to go towards lesser government. In fact, Reagan said that government is not the solution, it's the problem. And it is. But he was reading. It's like a script. It's like if you're going to do a movie, you have a script. You follow the script. And that's what this whole illegitimate left-right thing is all about. People following the script. There's the thesis, the antithesis, and then the synthesis. That's the melding, the moderates, the mainstream, the mindset, where they own and control your thoughts. But let's go back in time to 1980, the Joe Louis Arena in Detroit. Ronald Reagan was going to be the presidential nominee, and the decision was going to be made as to who would be the vice presidential candidate. There was Jack Kemp, there's George Bush. People didn't like George Bush. No, they weren't trusting him at all. Then something happened in that arena, and I was there with Gary Richard Arnold, and we were making banners which would show the Trilateral Commission's insignia, which is like a 6 and a 6 and a 6. And when you pull it out, it comes into a 666. There were little tunnels which goes into the arena. And across the tunnels, we unfolded this thing on a big piece of canvas. The lights going all over the place when they announced the candidate for vice president, the nominee. But before that happened, all of the conservatives were asked to get out of the arena. And as we were all going out of the arena, I wasn't really a conservative, I've always been a libertarian, but as the people were, the delegates and alternates were going out of the arena, there's a whole new raft of people coming into the arena. I said, if they got some other event scheduled, this is the Republican National Committee putting on this convention to select the president and vice president. We were all going out. Some other group was coming in. I didn't know who they were. But my friend Gary Richard Arnold and I walked across the parking lot, got into the car and went across the river to Ontario. We were sitting down there having dinner. We saw these searchlights going off everywhere. I said, my God, what is going on? Everywhere. We turn on the news. They had reconvened the convention. The counterfeit conservatives brought in George Herbert Walker Bush to be the nominee for vice president. They asked that these new people recognize him. They gave him a round of applause, a cheer, but it was in the same group. They'd removed the people who wanted less government and brought in the people who wanted more government. Oh, there's one other thing. George Skull and Bones Herbert Walker Bush The guy who laid nude in the coffin was born again into the satanic order at the tomb at Yale University is named Magog. That's the man who wages war against God in the final days of the earth. That's who this counterfeit conservative, this ringer on the right, this Ronald Wilson, Mr. 666, Ronald 6, Wilson 6, Reagan 6, had chosen to be his running mate. Oh, a deal was going on, something behind the scenes. And then people said, well, this guy is a conservative. My God, we have to put him in. He's going for less government. No, he really wasn't going for less government. He was going for total government. And Ronald Wilson Reagan, most interesting guy. 13 years in the United World Federalists, in the LA Committee for a Far Eastern Policy, twice cited by the California House on Committee on Un-American Activities as agents or representatives of the Soviet Union. All of those things you heard about back in the 50s, and you thought, well, is there nothing to that? No, there's something to that. But they didn't understand that this is a rich man's game. Manipulation of the masses. Mind control. It's like the mind made of mush, and they're just wrenching it and squeezing it and squishing it so that it fits in with their program. And the people think that they're going to get a candidate to oppose this great scheme. I was conned for years until 1964, and I found out that the Republican Party had been taken over. You say, well, are the people like Reagan, are they really following a Luciferian doctrine? We'll figure it out. A so-called Christian conservative picking up as his vice presidential candidate a man from the Skull and Bones, the Brotherhood of Death. And of course, there's all sorts of talks about what goes on behind the scenes. Thievery, corruption, mass murder. Is it satanic? Is it Luciferian in nature? Absolutely. No question. Not even a fragment of doubt. I talked to an individual who'd seen one of my films, and he was taking a look at my conversation about General Albert Pike, whose statue is over on Plymouth Avenue. It's off Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles. 20-foot statue, General Albert Pike, said, yes, Lucifer is God. And co-founded the Klan. This fellow who had gone to one of my lectures, he'd come out and he kept looking at the film. He calls me in the middle of the night and asked me to come over, and I did. He says, what do? I'm in the Prince Hall Lodge. I'm a Mason. He says, I can't just go out and diss these guys. I'd have to do that publicly. I can't do that. I said, well, it's up to you. You're in an organization that was segregated by the founder of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, there's the black Masons and the white Masons. He went in front of them. He says, I've had it. No more. Because this evilarchy wants to set rich against the poor. The white against the black against the white, the women against the men, the haves and the have-nots. These are the same guys that were involved in the slave trade. Oh yeah, they were involved in the slave trade. And the Queen of England was involved with the British Dutch East India Company and opium. People who would sell opium to people who would reach other people and younger and younger and younger till America became addicted. There weren't such things as drug problems 100 years ago. Not like there is today. Nothing like it. You say, well, this is all happening by accident.
It couldn't possibly be happening by design. But it's not the money that they want. They want the mind. They want your mind, they want your children's mind. There isn't anything you have or ever had or ever hope to have, they're not planning to take it away. They want it all. They want the way your kids think. People who have children should take care of the children. They shouldn't be made wards of the state. One couple who has no children shouldn't be forced to pay for this, those who do. It's all part of the master plan. Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. One world, one race, one ruler. World government upon the ashes of all national sovereignty, for all people, for all time.
What is the end game? What is the end game of the Illuminati, of their political New World Order system? Their end game is godhood. It's a control freak's delusion of power. What does O'Brien, while he's torturing Winston Smith in the fictitious 1984, tell him? He says, Winston, do you want to know what this is really all about? As he leans over him on the rack, he says, it's about trampling and being trampled upon. It's about raw power. It's about a society that gets uglier, not more beautiful. We are the priest of power. It is about a psychopathic kingdom of pain and death for the general public. For the globalists, the end game is to reduce our population down to 500 million, at least, a 90% reduction from current levels. This is all on record. This is all publicly stated, hidden in plain view, but it's so horrific, most people can't deal with it. And to basically give the earth over to the elite and their progeny, their children and grandchildren, so they can have the life extension technology, so they can go to the stars, so they can have the future. They believe we're profane and ugly and bad and need to be wiped out.
Freedom isn't free. It costs. Our forefathers paid the price in blood. They stood up when most people were laying down or going in the opposite direction, running away from the enemy. In this particular case, the enemy is amongst us. We have to do that which has never been done before. We've got to, yes, you out there, and you, have got to take this information in this film, put it on the web, on the downloads by the millions. See, a world that is united is not free, and a world free is not united. Because that extinguishes the rights we have to be different, to be individuals, to speak our own mind and think for ourselves. One size doesn't fit. One government doesn't fit. The tribal, linguistic, racial, religious, political, ethnic nation states have the right to separate, to segregate. We don't have to accept what they say. Just accept their existence. Accept the reality. Deny this demonic evilarchy the opportunity to exterminate 90% of the people living on this earth. They plundered the planet. The planet is in peril. Join us in the fight for the free and sovereign world. This is Anthony J. Hilder, asking that you reach out and just someday touch beyond your fingertips. Listen, and you will hear so many things that are happening. If you pay attention, learn to listen beyond the limit of your ears. Learn to see beyond your sight. And to touch, reach out and touch beyond your fingertips. You and you out there. And you haven't said much. It's time to open up your mouth and speak. It's time to start thinking and not let other people think for you. Empires are but dreams come true. For freedom to win, the evilarchy must die.